all of us out there know like the pressures that the court could bring, and that pales in comparison to alienation. And I feel bad for letting everybody down, but it's been a tough road. The past couple of months has been brutal, and I felt that I was helping the wounded, as Brian Lee says on his show, being a voice for the voiceless. And I know there's people suffering out there. Parents that miss their children dearly. There's the children that that are should be protected from this. I've let you guys down in the fight to about a change, and also I've been very open about my struggle with depression and depression and unfortunate two attempts at suicide. What I found is I went from shame and hiding it because obviously nobody wants that disclosed. But then, out there, and I've realized 33% of the 33% of alienated parents are more likely to attempt suicide than the national average. And when you look at the ACEs study, adverse childhood events, those people, anybody with an ACE score of 4 or higher, that makes you 4.5 times more likely to suffer from depression, 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. So we could kind of see that this is the untold problem that really never gets addressed, is the torture that parents go through and kids. That prior stat that I mentioned with 12%, 12% increased risk, that's for children attempting suicide. So when you get an ACE score of 4, adverse childhood experiences, a score of 4 or above makes a child 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. So national crisis that really needs to be addressed. For that reason, my activism goes is one is for parental alienation awareness and to fight for a change to protect our children, and second, the awareness for depression and suicidal risk in children and adults. So it's been a that's my fight, and the fight that I will continue pretty much till as long as I can. But I do apologize for not being around for a while. I really missed the activism. I missed trying to help people, because really that's in my heart. It's in my heart to try to heal. And hey, here you go. Here we go with the tears again. So I apologize. I get like that a lot. Let's go back a little bit. I want to thank certain a bunch of people before we really start getting. I want to thank first and foremost ULINY for giving us this platform and the honest the honor of being able to reach out to you on a major internet station. Second of all, I have to really say an extensive gratitude to Mr. Gary Jacobs, the chairman of Americans for Legal Reform, and Americans for Legal Reform themselves, because they've helped turn my life around and give me a fighting chance in family court. They've provided a vehicle for me to drive so I could see my children for visitation. And without them, my life would be radically different. So to the members of Americans for Legal Reform and to Mr. Gary Jacobs, I will have an eternal gratitude and say thank you. Next, I want to, talk about, there's something big's going on, and I'm kind of sworn to secrecy, but I want to thank a group, Leading Women for Shared Parenting, for really their endorsement and their support. So, this is a group of, women who really, really want to fight for, a just change in the family court system and for child visitation. So a big debt of gratitude to them as well. That's Leading Women for Shared Parenting. So we got a couple of thanks in order. And I think what we're going to do is, since we ran a little off with the time, I want to play a commercial from AJ. It's been wonderful to me. They've actually provided me with clothing and textbooks on parental alienation. And these guys, they run a great business, but also this that I can't say enough to the Jost family, Greg Jost, Andrew Jost, and Laura Spruill for their support, and honestly their friendship has been tremendous. So I think Eric's queuing up this commercial, which I love it. I think it's a fun commercial. So and let me know, Erica, if you're good to go. All right, let's hear it.
Costs a lot of money. Cause AJ's spot gon' bring it to you. Cause AJ's spot gon' bring it to you. Signing up the weekend is up. Don't believe me, stop by. This year, a truckload of Sunday and Spot marked down to the AJ's lowest prices, as low as $79 a month. Closeouts, leftovers, all at AJ's Spas on Route 112 in Patcho or on the web at ajspa.com.
So I ask anybody locally to really, if you're looking for a hot tub, good deal. And again, these are the nicest people. So, you know, Rose family, to Andrea Fastman, Laura Strule, thank you for. Ask anybody who lives in Suffolk County or in the tri-state region to really talk to them if you're looking to get a hot tub. So my thanks for their support of the show and for their wonderful help for me personally. So AJ Spa, ladies and gentlemen. So I think that I want to try to give people a chance to call in. So I think you're gonna have phone calls in the interim. Let you guys know my agenda. And really, what I want to talk about on this show is the devastating effects of parental alienation. So, we all know the definition. It's basically psychological manipulation where one parent, the targeted parent against their children. So, children are taught to fear their other parent, disrespect them, or not trust them. And again, it's not natural. This is a not natural cause. But I think we got a caller on the phone. Hey, thanks, Keith. Keith, I appreciate the call, and I know your case pretty well. We've had the opportunity to speak on prior shows and in person, and you're a person who knows alienation well and knows the emotional torture that comes with it. As far as what can you do to get active, it's exactly what you're doing. You tune into shows like you share things on social media, and word of mouth is eventually going to spread. And I am convinced that it's gonna skyrocket. It's just going to hit that one point where it really skyrockets. So until then, stay in the game. Try to let people know on social media with the effects of it. Share other posts. Listen to other blog talk radio stations. Of course, you're going to listen to WLINY. But this is it. And the you help other people. You're kind of quiet about it, but I know that you're there for other alienated parents and people suffering in family court. So I can never ask more of you. And I inspire other people to become active. Well, actually, I'm honored that you gave such accolades. But what you bring up is a very good. When I hear people like say, "Hey, listen, get involved, go to this protest," fear of judicial backlash, and everyone's afraid to be seen on camera at a protest against family court, enforcement, anything family court related, and they're afraid to be seen. They're afraid to speak out because the courts are gonna hammer them. And I often get asked, like, well, what do you think about the Me Too movement or the women's rights movement? Like we just had a women's rights march the other day where there were millions of women out there and males supporting women's rights and getting out there in droves, huge numbers. And the way I always look at this is, women over time have been really not given a fair chance. They haven't been paid equally in the workplace. They haven't been able to hold prestigious positions, and it's long overdue their liberation. But one of the things I've learned for them is in fighting for their rights, they've learned to mobilize well. And I give them credit for that, and I think that we should make a conscientious effort to form an alliance that we support their cause, and in turn, that these women they're looking to protect their own children and their spouses, the spouses involved. So that's a big fact that I always want to bring up. Yeah, we have to be quiet. We have to be a little quiet about that right now. But no problem. But I think what it's like to beg for news media to give us a break. And I know that I've had my patients call into News 12 and try to get coverage. We've begged for coverage everywhere, and we haven't been successful yet. But the tides are changing, and I think that we're on the verge having news media with a global reach to start to illustrate our cause and to show the plight of alienated children and family court injustice. So that's a big one. That's definitely a big one. So I want to thank you for calling in, Keith. I support you in your continued fight, and I know that you're desperately trying to reestablish your relationship, a loving relationship with one of your sons. So my hopes and prayers are with you, Keith, and I'll always be at your side as you fight for justice. So all right, so take care, Keith. Thank you for calling in. So we right before Keith called in, and here's another example of a person who's facing alienation, and we know, how it affects children, and really when you look at it, it's child abuse, and some of the other things that I have to touch upon again, as I mentioned, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which is a landmark study that really shows that children under continued pressure that affects their brain development. It actually affects how the genes in our body are interpreted, then how our body then forms due to this genetic imprinting. So you're going to see measurable differences in key portions of the brain that are responsible for long and short-term memory, emotions, and thought processes and thinking. So we see that these are things we can measure. So it's not a subjective kind of outlook on what happens to kids. We really get to see that there are physical changes in their brain, and we get to recognize through this study that how deeply childhood adversity affects children, and in this and they're going to bounce back from it. This has long-term health effects for their development, health effects, the development of their immune system. I found the study to be frightening in that for there's a if you have an score of 4 or higher, or 7 and higher, that actually increases the risk of lung cancer by 3 times. Ischemic heart disease, which is the leading cause of death nationwide, you have a 3 times more likely chance of developing ischemic heart disease from prolonged exposure to stress through childhood. And actually a 20-year difference in life expectancy. So, a lot of times people will worry about cancer taking them out, but I truly believe that a stressful life will take you out much more likely and much faster than even cancer. So, we can't minimize this, and we can't be interpreted as whiners that are just complaining. lost in court. We really have to look at the effects on the children because that's really our focus. If the court's going to truly act in the best interest of the children, then what we need to do is to really protect children and not just live behind or hide behind rhetoric. We have to make a change because children are suffering. And, I, for one, can't let this sit for somebody else to fix. I can't walk away from this and know that, I could have protected, hopefully, my children, but maybe my grandchildren will benefit from our fight. The way I look at it, my situation is terminal. The damage is done. I'm an alienated parent. I'm grateful to have two of my four children continue to have a good relationship with me. I do love and miss my oldest two children dearly, and I walk around with that pain every day. And you guys know what it's like when, when your children reject you. There is nothing more painful than that taking place. So that's the whole point. So spirit, I've been with this movement forever. I'm sorry about my absences, but I realistically I've just been having such a hard time with depression and continued family court injustice that I just really need to take a tactical retreat and get myself together, get through this court hearing, and hopefully stay with you guys and be there to support you. So I have another commercial to play. So we're going to play that commercial now. I want to thank this person because Melissa Shea of Long Island Real Estate Investment Association made the show possible when I was running in 2016. So, I had a nice 8-month run, and it was all due to Melissa Shea's and Long Island Real Estate Investments support of our cause and support of this show. So we're going to play a commercial by Long Island Real Estate Investment Association and express our gratitude to Melissa Shea.
Melissa Jeanette Shea, and I'm the president of real estate investing, basically on a dare. My ex-husband said he didn't think I could do it because I was a woman, and he just didn't think I could do it. So I took it on as a challenge, and I was watching those late-night infomercials, and I had seen Carlton Sheets, and I realized that this could be something that I could enjoy, and it could provide financial stability. Well, a lot of the late-night infomercials make it sound so easy. There's really a skill set to it, and I did learn that later, but I really found a passion for it. I bought the company in 2006, 2007. I guess my predecessor had seen the writing on the wall that the recession was coming, so she wanted to close the organization. I saw it as an opportunity to help and support people while they were going through the recession, although we didn't know how much of a devastating impact it would have. And so it's nice that Long Island RIA has been there before the recession, after the recession, and will continue to be there for the next real estate correction. So Long Island RIA is very unique in the fact that it provides all the resources for a real estate investor to be truly successful. The first thing we do is we have the largest real estate network association in all of New York. Secondly, we provide quality education by experienced real estate investors to help you both in-state and out-of-state at national programs. The third thing we funding that a real estate investor could possibly need. Everything from fix and flip to buy and hold to the commercial refis on after values. We have it all, and we have it for all states. The fourth thing that we have is we outdo Wall Street. We have a member-to-member benefit program where you can earn 7% fixed return monthly. And unique and stand out from the rest. Additionally, everybody needs to know about us because, especially when it comes to New York is very unique in how it does its real estate. Most of the national programs talk to you about wholesaling. It's virtually impossible the way they teach it to do it effectively and legally in New York. So they always have these clauses, check with your local state. Well, when you check with New York, you'll find that a lot of the techniques they teach you won't work in our state, both legally as well as make you any money. So you spin your wheels, you get fatigued, you toss your hands up and you say, this doesn't work. But that's not the truth. And if you come to the organization, we'll teach you how to do it right, successfully, and make you money. So if you're watching this video and you can relate to taking on a challenge or wanting to get out of your 9 to 9 or 7 to 7 a.m., 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. work week, or you've seen the national programs and you think that they don't work, come see Long Island Rhea. Give it a try. Our phone number is 631-504-6096, or you can reach us on our website at lireia.com.
Are we live? All right, guys.
I gotta tell you, listening to that commercial for Long Island real estate, I wish I had money after my divorce to invest in real estate. Because if I did have money to invest, I would go to Melissa Shea in the Long Island. And in fact, actually, I did go to I went to 2 of her meetings just to get educated, because they have a lot of intelligent people who are investors, and I learned a lot going there. So for the day when I get myself back into a good financial standing, then I'm going to go to invest with the Long Island Real Estate.
Melissa Shea's the one to go with.
Absolutely. This woman, she knows her stuff, and she's built a tremendous business. So really an amazing.
And
woman.
obviously, she has some ethics and some class. She supports Carlos. Can't beat that.
Absolutely.
Can't beat that. For those of you, that was I apologize for the crude interruption. Carlos will be back in about 5 minutes. He's taking a break. And I'm Frank Vetro
I'm Gary Jacobs.
Of Long
And
Island.
we are the Frank and Gary Show. In
Yeah.
the best interests of corruption.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So we just got thrown on here, but we got 2 mouths. So I've been listening to Carlos, and one thing that I always wanted to ask Carlos, I'm going to ask you. Okay?
I hope I can answer
We've
for
all been a victim of some. I know you have been. I have been. Carlos, for me, different reasons. A victim of the court system and whatnot. I know why it was done to me. I know what happened to me. It was a personal vendetta against me, on top of everything else. And it spiraled out of control to some selective prosecution and whatnot. What I always wanted to ask Carlos, and where is he right now? Does anybody know why? Was it personal, or is it just the system? What is it?
Well, I have to, from Carlos's perspective, I'll tell you from Ryan, but from Carlos's perspective, I can't tell you how many times the man has sat there and said to me, why me? Why did this happen to me? All I did was get divorced. I love my kids. I'm a good person. But from my perspective as president of Americans for Legal Reform, to be quite honest, I see a lot of judges. I don't want to say mostly and sue me. A lot of judges, in my opinion, most of the judges have a psychological problem. They're sociopaths. They're narcissists. Now they get a guy who comes before them who's a board-certified pediatrician, and they say, you know what, you think you're smart? Well, I'm smarter than you. I got my robe, and I can do what I want to destroy you. I see it in cases, believe it or not, with police officers. You would think police officers have it made when they go to court, but when they go to divorce court, their guns get taken away, and they just really get treated like crap when they're in court. Another thing is, believe it or not, Frank, you might find this interesting in divorce court, that divorce lawyers, you would say, oh, they get the best deal. They really don't. For whatever reason, it's a power struggle with the judge in many times. So why it happened to Carlos, I think he was a victim of circumstance, but it happened because it's money. Let me tell you, if Carlos was a poor man, nobody would know who Dr. Carlos Rivera was. But because there was money, there was potential for money, they went after him, and Carlos kept feeding the monster. I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars he spent in legal fees paying attorneys. And as long as that gravy train is coming, they're going to keep taking it.
So are you saying that there are times there may be a settlement on the horizon between 2 exes, okay, in a divorce? And are there times when an attorney may say, hey, wait a second, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones, you could get a little bit more?
Oh, I think all the time. But the question is also, at what expense? Number one, yeah, I can get you $10,000 more, but it's going to cost you $15,000 in legal fees. So do you really win? But I've had lawyers say, look, keep doing this because you're going to get your pound of flesh out of her.
Right.
So the lawyers do feed this process. But many times people will say, and in fact, people have reached out to me on social media and said, why doesn't Carlos just be done with this? Why does he keep staying in court? Well, it's not. It takes 2 people. Do you think he filed a current petition to put him in jail? Of course not. He doesn't want to be in court. So I have to honestly say all these things could have been settled. In fact, in Carlos's case specifically, Americans for Legal Reform tried to settle with his wife, and she wasn't in for a very nice amount, really, a huge amount of money, more than most people make in a year. And she wasn't interested. So it takes two people to settle. And, and I will tell the listeners that unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, a lot of times the first deal is the best deal. And when you don't take that, you end up destroying it. And in this case, with Carlos's case, what I like to say is not only his ex-wife, Frank, but the judge, the law guardian, the whole system killed the golden goose. If they didn't destroy this man mentally and break him down, the guy still would be practicing medicine. He would get back on his feet, but they killed the golden goose. Now everybody's upset, right? Oh, where's the money? We don't like that he's going on disability. Well, you guys did it to the man. What did you think was going to happen? Listen, Frank, look what happened to your career. You were actually not convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor. You didn't spend 6 months in jail. And look what it did to your career.
Right.
People don't want to touch somebody who's tainted. There's plenty of people that listen.
That's right.
There's plenty of other educators that they can get that we want to have it. Somebody says, "Oh, why'd you hire the guy who went to jail?" Well, he didn't really do it.
Who needs the headache? There's 40 other resumes.
Let's just take one of the other ones and not deal with it. And
right.
Unfortunately, that's what happens in Dr. Carlos's case. That you know what? There's plenty of other pediatricians, so let's use them. Who wants to deal with them? Who wants to have them practicing in our hospital? Who wants this? What doctor is going to refer their kids to them? Listen, it doesn't take a genius to know this was going to happen, Frank. What did anybody think was going to happen when you put a man in jail? Forget about Carlos, right? That's common sense.
Anybody, right?
You put a man in jail who was working at a job, and now he's in jail. When he gets out, do you think he's going to go back to making the same living?
Right.
Hell no.
Now how's he going to make the payments?
It's not common sense. It's freaking stupidity.
Right. And in every other aspect, this is one of the areas I always touch on because it still bothers me, actually. In any other aspect of life, you owe somebody money, you owe somebody money. Put a lien on them, a judgment, if so this way when they sell their house in 10 years.
Or they die.
Or they die. You get money before they prosper from it. They have to pay you. Fine and good. Send them to jail? I don't get it.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, besides the whole thing that the debt is prison, and the whole thing doesn't. Listen, we could go back and say this is where the case should have gone. From the listen, I have a whole bunch of things are wrong with this. In fact, you talk about criminal court and how it's not fair. Imagine this, Frank. Carlos was sentenced to jail without a jury. Believe it or not, technically, he was sent to jail without a judge hearing his case. A judge, a hearing officer heard it, went to a judge and said, "Here's what I heard. I think the man should go to jail." Stamp it, and the guy goes to jail. You wouldn't believe that without a jury. Somebody could spend 6 months in jail
the United States of America
without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
Wow.
And when he's in jail, guess what? He got less prisoners than somebody who's in for a violent crime.
Was this consecutive? Like he didn't aren't there times I could be wrong. I'm maybe making things up in my head. And not that this would be good either, but what could have been like alternate weekends or something like that. This way he could have still.
Yeah, we spoke. I believe that and in fact I asked Carlos because we saw that somebody else was sentenced to a thing where they went to weekends, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna go for for 3 years. I'm gonna go on week." But the funny thing is, what would happen on weekends, Frank? That's when he's supposed to see the kids.
Right.
So now he doesn't get to see the kids.
Right.
Literally for 2 or 3 years. The whole thing doesn't make sense.
No.
I think, how ironic, the best interest of the children. Right. There's nothing about that frickin' place that's in the best interest of the children.
At what point, with regard to parental alienation, or does it not happen, or does it happen? At what point would a judge, or isn't there like a forensic investigator that might be appointed?
It actually doesn't have to be a forensic. In many cases, they're appointed, but they appoint them when there's money. So in his case, the issue with forensic was really... There's a forensic for child custody and a forensic for money. None of those were really the issue. Carlos really sort of, as he says, he threw in the towel. He says he surrendered because they were basically threatening to withhold his children from him. He gave up the custody. He said, "I'm not going through a custody battle. I can't have it." And as far as the money, he basically did the same thing. Our issue at Americans for Legal Reform is there should have been a judge who said, "Hey, wait a minute. This doesn't work. The guy is being set up to fail, and it's going to go downhill. Let's get some common sense and fix this." But okay, the judge didn't do it the first time. They said, "Carlos is a fool. We don't believe that he has depression, and we're going to let him do it. He's a smart man. He signed it." Okay. But then when they went back to court, which many people say, why didn't he get it downward? The man goes back to court and says, hey, I can't pay this anymore. I can't keep up to this, whatever the amount is, 9,000 plus this, plus this, plus this. I can't keep up with it. My numbers don't make sense. At that point, a judge should have said, you know what, you're right. We're gonna reduce it to a tenable amount. Let's just make it what the child support guidelines are. And let me tell you, if everybody would have done that from the beginning, I believe Carlos would still be practicing medicine. All his patients would have their loving doctor. His children hopefully wouldn't have been alienated against him, and his ex-wife would have been supported. But they just beat this man. And I say all the time, everybody has their breaking point, Frank. You and I are tougher guys. We're ball fight back. Carlos isn't as tough. Everybody's built different. There's nothing wrong with that. He's been open with the fact that he's had a lifelong issue with depression and and bipolar, and certain things trigger it. Well, if this isn't a trigger, what is?
Oh man.
Right? I mean, there is no trigger.
No.
So
now, at what point would would they or do they not, with regard to parental alienation, judge or somebody say, listen, with regard to Carlos's case specifically, his ex-wife, listen, what you're doing is wrong, lady. Maybe you shouldn't have custody, or maybe we should rework the terms of the agreement, or whatever it is.
I got to tell you.
Do they do that?
Yeah, it is possible. There's a case where the Young case, and in fact, your attorney here who has the show, Phil Giacino, he's involved in many parental alienation cases. In Suffolk County, I can only speak from Nassau and Suffolk, where I'm more familiar with. They don't care about parental alienation.
They don't care.
In fact, I say that the judges encourage it. Because what happens is, here's the catch-22. You go to court, at the beginning, Carlos says, this is horrible. My kids are missing their time with me. Nobody's doing anything about it. And they go to court. And the judge says, well, they're teenagers, they're getting older, they have their friends. And no, it's alienation, it's alienation. But they're still coming to see you once in a while, right? So what do? We have to wait until listen, alienation doesn't usually happen overnight, right? I mean, brainwashing takes, depending on how, quote, good or bad you are, it takes time, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. So what happens is Carlos sits back and says, all right, she missed a dinner, she missed a sleepover. All of a sudden, it's like a frog in a pot of boiling water. All of a sudden, one morning, he wakes up and now he gets the text messages, we're not coming anymore, Dad. Now you go back to court. But now it's and they go, oh, maybe there is alienation now. But now it's but they go, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to yank the kid out of the house? So the judges need to nip this in the bud. And I tell people fighting alienation, don't let it go on. Throw all your assets at it, all your resources right at the beginning. Fight like a son of a bitch. Hire an attorney. And first of all, not a lot of attorneys understand parental alienation too. It is counterintuitive. So it takes a good attorney to recognize parental alienation. And then, of course, you have to have a law guardian who recognizes it, which a lot of them don't. A lot of them are very bad. And then you have to get a judge who's open to it. Carlos had a judge, Judge Cheryl Joseph. What a frickin', this woman didn't care. I don't know what Carlos's wife could have done to get her to understand, but she didn't care about alienation. You know what she cared about? She cared about money. That's all I don't want to hear about the kids. All about money, 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 money. That tells you what the courts, what's important to them. Let me tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, Frank, as you know, with Americans for Legal Reform. I have never seen a mother go to jail. Actually, I'll speak it. I've never seen a parent go to jail for withholding a child, meaning not abiding by the court order. I've seen many a man go to jail for not abiding by the same court order, the same piece of paper, but only about money. What does that tell you? All they care about is the interests of the children. It's really disgusting, and you could tell in my voice, it does piss me off.
Now, how do they determine custody to begin with?
Well, if you go to court and both parents are claiming that they're the better parent, then what they do is make it easier for the judge. They'll hire a forensic evaluator who will go in and spend a couple months talking to the kids. The problem is that's a $10,000 to $15,000 thing that the parents have to pay. You know, it's allocated sometimes based on pay, sometimes based on the judge. What they do is they use that to make it so the judge doesn't have to make a decision. Because what they do is they get this forensic report back, and it says, let's say it says, Gary, you're not a good father. You know, they don't really spell it out exactly. Gary has issues, he's not the best. The mother has problems, but basically the mother's better. Then the judge goes to the lawyers in chambers and says, hey, look, the forensic says Gary's not the better parent. We think he should settle and give up custody. Or if the other way, it's the mother. So they use it as a tool to make you settle. The judge doesn't want to make this decision because, look, if the judge rules against the mother, and gives custody to the father, the women's groups go freaking nuts, right? And how could you take a baby from their biological mother? If they take it away from the father, Gary Jacobs goes nuts. Americans for Legal Reform goes nuts. Right. So we don't believe in taking it away from anybody. In fact, I personally, Frank, I take on a lot of cases, not a lot. I take on a few cases at Americans for Legal Reform where we help people through the case, as we did with Carlos. I will not take a case where a parent is trying to get sole custody and remove the kid from the other parent. Or a woman. Nobody, I don't help a father or a mother. I will only help them if they say they'll agree to shared parenting.
Well, yeah, no, it's one of the points I wanted to ask about also. Do they do this? Or is it a factor to consider in granting custody whether or not the parent would be more open or allow the relationship to be fostered with the other parent?
That's a key factor, and that's what they do in the forensics. They do things where asking to show how you would help the other parent. So that's a key thing in a custody
on
evaluation
paper,
paper, but on paper. But you could actually, believe it or not, a lot of people don't like. Listen, one person always doesn't like the forensic report, right? So it's always against you. You know, one person, they're not going to like it. So 50% of the people hate the forensic report. But I got to tell you, I've had forensics. And mine was very accurate. I've seen listen, you could trick an evaluator in a short term, but when you go through a 6, 7, 8 month forensic evaluation with a trained psychiatrist, you know, we have some very good ones here on Long Island. We have Dr. Burkhardt, we have Jen Campbell, we have, come on, help me out. We have Dr. Robert Goldman. There's a couple that really, Dr. Santoro, that really get it and understand alienation. I'm always scared, though, when somebody says, I'm going to get a forensic. Because if you get one of these ones that I did not mention, they don't understand alienation. And you could be screwed. They become aligned with the abuser. And many people have called into your shows that you've done and say, they gave the custody to the abuser. It does happen, Frank. It does happen.
What if the kid says, I don't want to go with daddy, I don't want to go with mommy?
Well, see, I personally, they do ask the kids when they're older. I don't like it. You're putting the kids in a position to make adult decisions. And if you go to a lawyer and he says, hey, Frank, down the road, they're going to talk to your kids, Frank, and they're going to ask them, who do you want to live with? Now you're telling that parent, hey, start alienating now because you got to brainwash these kids to tell the judge what you want the judge to hear. I mean, really, I don't believe in any of this crap. I believe both parents share the damn custody. I think it's disgusting when people go into court and say, I want to make him see the kid every Wednesday, or I want to make my ex-wife. Let me tell you, Frank, nobody dislikes their ex-wife more than me. And I'm being nice, really. Nobody, well, maybe her first husband dislikes her less than me. But honestly, I despise this woman. She's mentally ill. She's just a nasty, horrible woman, a horrible mother. I never try to keep the kids from her, Frank. We ended up getting, on paper, shared 50-50 custody. I never withheld the kids. Let them figure out when they're older that their mother has issues. And actually, that could help them grow up. They may say when they get older, you know what? I don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to be a shallow person and have no friends. I want to be like my dad. Hopefully. But, well, we can hope. But she ended up saying, well, now I'm going to withhold them from him. So now they only have that sick individual. It's very sad. In Carlos's case, you talk about the judges. How do you explain that 2 of Carlos's children still talk to him? So the judge would say, well, obviously she doesn't alienate because 2 kids still talk to you. Well, I can explain it because every kid is different. First of all, the 2 older ones don't talk to him, right? That right there that's a difference. Second of all, every kid is different. I don't want to talk about the specifics of his children, but obviously every kid is different. Everybody has a different breaking point in life. Clearly there's alienation because one thing is for sure, Frank, Carlos did not tell his kids not to talk to him, right? Before the divorce, they loved him very much. What changed? Well, he certainly didn't badmouth himself, did he?
Right.
So it's common sense.
Are there issues where, depending on the age difference, where the older kids are the ones not talking to him?
Well, they
could talk to the other kids and say, hey,
what
Daddy's
happens,
not bad.
This is such a messed up dynamic, and I don't know what goes on within certain families. But I know that usually, in my case, the same thing happened too. The older one stopped, and the next one, and then what happens is the younger ones start getting pressure from the older ones. Why are you going to see Dad? Why are you seeing him?
Right.
It just causes a lot of, and then they go, well, you know what? It was okay for the older 2 not to see him, so nobody did anything about it, right? So why do I have to go? It's just a horrible, horrible, horrible thing for the children all around, Frank.
Now, not too familiar with, not like I'm more of a criminal court
Right.
guy. But one thing that I am familiar with because of what I do during the day besides the radio, I'm a principal for a private school. So I work with kids who've been arrested, kicked out of school, just in and out of the system, and I educate them and put them back in the community. Not every time, nothing's all the time, but so many times what I see, and this kind of relates, I think, to the family courts, the kids that are in trouble, in and out of jail, so many
where you're
times
going.
they don't
Missing
have
a
a dad
parent.
in their life.
Usually, people say, oh, it's mothers too. The problems that we see with drugs, with violence, are problems in their life. The problems, obviously, teen pregnancy and women, girls dating much older men is from the women being raised, girls being raised without their father. There's there's tons of issues of kids being raised without either parent, but I think the statistic is over 80% of people in jail are raised without a father. So when they say in the best interest of the children, obviously the best interest would be to have the father. I've often said, how about an incentive for the father to be in their life? How about you pay less if you have your kid more? But
Right.
that's total, common sense is totally out of this equation. But I know we don't have too much time because I know Carlos is going to come back. And I did want to talk about some things because we had a couple callers earlier and I've seen some postings, people asking, well, what can we do? And as the president of Americans for Legal Reform, and I'm the third president, I believe, Carl Ann Cesara founded the organization. It's the oldest legal reform group in the United States. And as he said, listen, I'll try anything because what I'm doing is not working. So what we started promoting, and we started doing this with Carlos, is social media. And I have to tell you, it is amazing. When Carlos had his show on WLINY, this man had followings around the world.
He did.
When in fact, he put a post up yesterday, and by the end of the night, there was over 3,000 people saw it.
Yeah.
So the power of the social media is tremendous. And sometimes people say, oh, a couple hundred people saw this one, 1,000. All you need is one, Frank. All you need is that one person to watch it who has a TV show and who can promote it. The person that has a lot of money and it's the politician who says, you know what, this is a horrible issue. So you get this huge range. But that's only half the issue with why I recommend doing this. The second part is giving you a voice. And Carlos always says on his show, and he starts crying every time he says it, but I want to thank WLINY for giving me a voice. Giving me a voice. Because when you go to court, Frank, and I don't know if you experience this in a criminal court, but you lose your voice.
Oh.
When you're standing next to a lawyer, and especially you have a lot to say all the time. And the lawyer speaks for you, and you're saying, wait a minute, I know my story. You always say, I know my story better than anybody. Imagine being a father, losing your and you can't even have an attorney.
They talk to you like you're not even there.
Yeah.
You're standing right there.
Like
and
you're
at
not
best,
there.
you're like a docket number or something like
Right.
that, number or whatever. And oh, God.
The
what is
plaintiff.
this? Yeah,
The
exactly.
defendant. So this gives, having this voice.
Yeah.
Really listen to.
He's a tremendous
these
voice,
shows.
and he's pathetic, and he appeals to the crowd. He's great. He was great on WLA.
I think, believe it or not, I believe that letting Carlos go forward in social media really saved his life, honestly, because I've seen him when he's just so despondent and says, Gary, I can't speak, I can't do this. And when he hasn't had his radio show, because obviously, he suffered that major depressive episode and had to go off the air, I think that spiraled him way worse, out of control when he as
I
he
agree.
says to me, Gary, I lost my voice.
I agree. And before we pass it back over to Carlos, one of my goals in starting WLANY was, because I didn't have my voice going through, was to give people a voice, and he was the biggest one, and I'm proud of him. And
You
with
mean
that,
big physically?
Physically? No, not physically.
Yeah, Carlos
but-
and I always making
but
fun of
we'll
him
turn it
about
back
that.
over to Carlos now.
Yeah, but also the same thing with Long Island Backstory. That was the reason I started it also, and I'm
Absolutely.
passionate about doing that. And I hope that Carlos ends up, taking this torch. And as he always says, my case is terminal. He always says, I'm only doing this for everybody,
That's right.
else. So to fill in for you for Frank words, and either am I. So between the two
Don't
of us,
get paranoid. We'll keep it going.
I think he's worried if he.
That's it.
but
You'll
he's
find
get-
it, Carlos.
He's getting nervous and he's plugging.
Atta
Carlos,
boy.
you want to take
All
my
right.
phones? Okay, back to Dr. Carlos. Okay. They're sweated, but.
Hey guys, happy to be back. I'm on a dead mic. Okay, guys, thank you. I'm sorry about the interim change. There's just a lot of exciting things going on behind the scenes that we really can't talk about right now. But I appreciate Frank Vetro, Eric Koppelman, and Phil Giacino giving this tremendous opportunity to come back on the air and have this special show on WLINY. And I actually I'm just informed that someone who I respect tremendously is calling in on the phone. So many of you people know of Kenya Rahman of the Child Support Hustle, and Kenya's got an incredible story. Her group just does tremendous work, and it is really she her posts I follow all the time, and she's a tremendous individual, and it's wonderful to have such a strong female ally. So I don't know, Kenya, are you there now? Good, I miss you. How you been? You know, Kenya, one of the things I want to talk to you about, because I've had the opportunity to speak on your show, and I don't know if you can maybe encapsulate a little bit about how the Child Support Hustle came to be and what you guys are doing now. Yeah, Kenny, one of the things I found most remarkable about how you started your blog and how you started the Child Support Hustle was that the way I understand the story is that your ex was being persecuted by child support enforcement. You were asking them to lay off of him, that you were fine with the arrangement you had, yet it was them who was taking the aggressive action against your ex, and you actually came to his rescue. Thank you, Kenya, because in my own contempt case, my ex was literally asked if he can't pay, do you want him in jail? And she said, if that's what it takes. And I couldn't believe the amount of power that she was given. You get somebody who's clearly looking for a vendetta, and there is no logic to what took place. It's strictly for revenge. And again, like you just said, there's too much power for one person, especially when we were taught to believe that truth will prevail and we have the greatest justice system on the planet. And I was like, geez, if this is the best, I'm really scared about any place else, because we learned from the inside that it's a horrible, horrible system.
the state. So they are they are actually the recipients of that child support, so they enforce the law to go after that parent. So when I was researching my case, that's when I found out how the child support system operates and how unfair it is, how biased it is, how unconstitutional it is, how illegal, I even say illegal, because a lot of the enforcement are just a violation of people's rights, especially if you're a father or not.
Okay, so I'll wrap it up now. You know, Kenya, again, you're basically, I'm looking for a word. It's not quite inspiring. It's so informative. It's an awakening to the system. You know, I think that what you stand for is equality. You know, like both. The system's set up to promote acrimonious and hostile relationships to keep the machine fed. They continue to get this money, and what I consider that our fight is to change of divorce and not make this into an adversarial system. That we need to keep the children truly at the focus and their best interest and working together for a common solution that works. Not spend all your resources in court for the sake of a win. Now, by the time you're done, there's nothing left to take care of your kids with. But that's just the way the system works. And I love the child support hustle because the court operates under the premise that's in the best interest of children, where you and I know from the inside, it's the last thing that happens. It's a premise for what's, in the best interest of the court's finances. And, and your blog really points it out. I love following you guys on social media. And again, talk about the next thing you're doing so the listeners once again hear what you got going on at the end of next month or March.
Okay, we're going to be in Huntsville, Alabama. We're having a town hall. Then we're going to have different people come in to speak. We have Carnell Alexander. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with his case. He had a case out of Michigan when he wasn't even a biological father, but he was forced to pay child support, and he fought back. And I've been working with him a lot. I'm trying to get laws changed to get maternity fraud that's going on in this country, which is rampant as well. He's going to be a speaker. We have Edmund Wells coming down from Discussion.
Yeah.
He's going to come speak for us. And Michael Volpe, he wrote a book, The Chris Magny Story, about a father who was tortured to the point where he committed suicide because of the family courts and child support and everything. He just felt like there was nothing left for him to live for. So Mike will be out there. My producer, the radio show, the Child Support Hustle Show, Marcus Eccles, he'll be there. He's hosting there. I'll be there.
Kenny, what's the date again? The date when's the date you're gonna be in Huntsville, Alabama for this?
It's Saturday, February 24th, and it'll be from 12 to 4 o'clock. I don't have the address of the facility, but we'll be posting the flyer online and tagging everybody. And hopefully people come out. We have people that are going to be there telling their personal stories. So we want to open it up, and have live streams going on people's Facebook and YouTube. So we're looking forward to it. Hopefully, like I said, bring awareness to this huge issue, which is child support reform. We have to get it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, Kenny, I want to thank you for coming on. We had a special episode today, and I want to thank WLINY for this privilege. And, in time, I could tell, the excitement that's going on behind the scenes. But for now, I really want to thank you for, again, the privilege of speaking with you and talking about the child support hustle soon. All right. So.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos. And anybody, we have a petition online. They can go to our website, thechildsupporthustle.com, and you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Carlos.
Oh, my pleasure, Kenya. You take care and God bless.
God bless. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Be good. Good luck at the doctors. All right. So, yeah, I know what it's like to wait in the doctor's office. But, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And again, I can't thank WLINY enough for this really, really unique opportunity that they've granted to me. And all I could say is just stick around and watch WLINY because they got a lot of big things going on, and you're going to see in a few months actually, you're going to see what's taking place here. So very, very exciting news. So I want to thank again Eric Koppelman, Frank Vetro, Phil Giacino of WLINY for this opportunity. I would like to thank the Americans for Legal Reform and Mr. Gary Jacobs for their support in giving me a fighting chance in court. They've peeled me off the floor after emotional breakdowns more times than I could count. So I'll be eternally grateful to them. So, and also I'd like to thank Melissa Shea of Long Island Real Estate Investment Association and the Jost family in Fast AJ Spa in Patchogue, New York. So I'm going to close out with never get through listening to without breaking down. But this is it's a great song by a group called Stained. It's called Zoe Jane, and it describes a parent's love for their child. So Eric, I don't know if you have it queued up. Song Sweet Zoe Jane. Eric's looking for it now, so I'm gonna keep talking about it. But again, I listened to this song. I think it really accurately depicts the pain of being a loving parent.